Hey, guys. Welcome back to this week's session of the Fight Club. Here with my longtime friend, Alan Newell. And we're here to just have a real heart-to-heart conversation about men's issues and address all the issues, hopefully address all the issues that we all go through as men, which are many in this culture that constantly beats down and badgers men and tries to prevent us from being the man God has called us to be, because it's the antithesis of what the culture is. A godly man is the antithesis, is the exact opposite of what the culture tries to present manhood to be. And so that's what the Fight Club is all about. It's a program, a talk show. I don't know what you call it. Something that Alan and I have prayed about for a long time, been on our hearts for over 5 years, I guess, Alan. And God has finally seen to it to bring it to fruition. We've been blessed with a lot of people coming on board, and we just wanted to kind of give you a couple minute reiteration of what we're about to any newcomers. And Alan and I have been Christians a long time. We are not pastors by any stretch of the imagination. We do read our Bible and we study the Word, and we are faithful to our churches. And but we're just regular guys who deal with the same things you guys deal with. And we know how easily it is to be victimized by the enemy when we isolate ourselves. And the purpose, really one of the ultimate purposes of this club is to help all of us understand that we're not alone, that not to be isolated and not to think that we're the only ones going through whatever we go through. You know, when you have to make a hard decision as a dad, you're not the only one that's had to make that hard decision. And hopefully maybe something on this in this program will give you some encouragement, give you some ideas, give you some direction about making that decision, that it's okay. And as I say often, it's okay to be a turd sometimes. Sometimes you got to make those hard decisions, and not necessarily popular with your kids, not necessarily popular with your family or your neighbors or anybody else. But you aren't here to please man. You're here as a man of God to please God. And that's where the loneliness sometimes sticks us, and the feeling of isolation hits us. And we're here to encourage you guys that is not the case. You are not by yourself. There's millions of men out there that feel the same way. We just got to band together and encourage each other and walk through these things that this world is throwing at us on a daily basis. So with that, Alan, how have you been, man? Good to see you.
Hey, I've been great. And I've been awesome. And David, exactly what you said is what you said. And, as we all know, one thing I want to make sure that everybody, our audience, understands, there's no such thing as a perfect Christian. There's only been one perfect man that walked the earth, and he knew for 30 years that he was the King of Kings and the Son of God, but he lived for 30 years as a carpenter.
Yeah.
And I got my son here with me right now, Ethan.
Hi.
Big Ethan's here hanging out with us. And so one of the things I like to talk about is this, is living a Christian life is not being perfect. I'm not perfect, am I? No. And neither is he. But
kids will tell you too, won't they?
Oh, yeah, they will. We talked about that earlier about, there's only two honest people in the world, and that's kids and drunks. And we prefer to hear it from the little guy here. But when you lead your life, you're going to make mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes with this guy here sometimes, but I love him and he knows that I love him. But see, in leading my life, when he's here beside me today, and as we walk through life, whether we're on the job, whether we're in a car, whether we're out with some friends at a football game, no matter where you are, people say to me, well, what does it mean to be a Christian? Well, it does not mean being perfect, because Lord knows we're not
Nobody's
that.
perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But if I act and handle myself as if this little guy right here, who I'm inspiring and encouraging and impressing every single day, is right with me wherever I go, would that change some of the things you say? Would that change some of the things you do? Would that change? And if that's the case, then maybe you need a little adjustment. Maybe you need a little modification. He's like, hey, can I join today? I'm like, sure. We're talking about God. We're talking about being Christian men, because, see, I teach him about being a godly Christian man and what it means to have respect and integrity and being well received and being honest and being truthful in life. And that's what we're called to do. David, we've talked a lot about the 4 pillars of a man's heart. Okay. And we've kind of talked about being, how we rush through these broadcast, telecast, podcast. They're not podcasts; they're video casts. I don't know what they are.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah,
call it the show.
Yeah,
the program.
One of the topics we've talked about, the 15 characteristics of a Christian man, and we're going to go back to that, because we're going to talk about that. But the main thing we want him to understand is that we're all in this together, and I like what a gentleman said, who is one of the most inspiring, encouraging coaches that there is, and Art Williams. And Art Williams said, and if you've ever seen his speech and his telecast when he did say this, is that he led up to it. It took it seemed like 10 minutes for him to lead up to it. He kept saying, now listen to me. I'm going to give you the best advice you've ever been given in your life. I'm going to give you advice that's going to change your life. I'm going to give you advice that's going to make your marriage better than it's ever been. Now listen to me. Are you listening? Now focus. Now pay attention. Now come in here and listen to me. Now you don't want to miss it, because it's short and it's sweet, but you don't want to miss it. It's so important that everybody's got to hear it. Everybody's got to know what we're talking about. Now I'm going to give you a short sentence that's going to make your life better than it's ever been. It's going to make you feel better about your life than you've ever felt. It's going to change your world forever. Are you ready to hear it? And the crowd would go, yeah. Now get your pen out. Now get your paper out. Are you ready? And he did this for it seemed like forever. And finally he said, all right, here it is. Here it is. Are you listening? Here it is. Here it is. Now write this down. Is the recording on? It was just, the anticipation.
Yeah.
And he says this. He said,
probably had him on the edge of their seat.
Yeah. He said, here's the statement. He said, here's what you need to know. All you can do is all you can do.
That's right.
All you can do is all you can do, but all you can do is enough. You see, all you can do is different for me at 60 years old than it is for this guy here at 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He's soon to be 9. That's right. And I say, hey, just be the best you can be today. Right? Just be the best you can be today. You see, all I can do may be different than all you can do, David.
Yeah.
All I can do may be different. You and I were talking yesterday that it takes lots of people to make this world go around. Mm. And a lot of people feel like that they're not worthy, that they're not enough, that they need to be more. Well, let me tell you something. All you can do being all you can do and doing the best. We talked about this yesterday, and being a godly man and the 4 pillars of a man's heart, a biblical view of true manhood. You see, nowhere in there does it say the 4 pillars of an entrepreneur's heart, the 4 pillars of a millionaire's heart. You see, you might lay asphalt for a living. You and I were talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
It was 90 degrees here yesterday. 90 degrees. And you and I talked about this yesterday, David, and I drove down to Myrtle Beach yesterday, me and Ethan and Eli. I went down to see my grandson play baseball in Myrtle Beach. And as we're leaving, we come upon this road construction, and literally they are digging up the asphalt with this machine that comes along, digs it up, and throws it in the back of a truck. And then behind it comes another truck who lays down fresh asphalt. And then some guys on some those what are those deals with the big wheels?
Bulldozers?
that flatten it out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he was riding that, you know, and smoothing out the asphalt. You
They used to
know,
be called steamrollers. I don't know what they're called
I think
now.
they are. I think they might be called steamrollers. And so they fill those big wheels, those big concrete, the steel wheels up. They fill them up with water,
Mm-hmm.
so they're heavy, and they roll over the asphalt to smooth it out. Listen, there are some amazing, godly, Christian, successful men who have amazing lives, who have beautiful families, who lead their lives in Christianity, and that's what they do for a living.
Yeah. There's nowhere does it say that you have to be a pastor, you have to be a deacon, you have to be anything you have to have a seminary education, nothing of the sort to be a Christian, to live a godly life. And,
That's right.
And that's a lot of what this whole show is about, is to drive that, you know, man, normal guys, they're the ones who reach the world, you know. The 12 disciples, they were just normal guys. They were fishermen. They were, you know, farmers, whatever. They were just normal guys.
Murderers?
And most of them were just fishermen. And God called them. In fact, the Bible says, not many mighty and not many noble are called. And so it doesn't mean you have to have a Harvard education to read the Bible and to learn the Bible. You don't have to have a seminary education to be able to understand the Bible. If you just read it, understanding will come. And you may not understand, we may not understand the deep things yet, but as just like anything else, you when you are digging into the earth to find gold, you know, you got to take out some stuff in the shallow part before you can get to the deep stuff. So as you read it and study it and learn it, you learn the easier stuff, the simpler stuff, which is what I needed to do when I first became a Christian. And then as you go on, as you continue, as you understand it, I mean, I remember surfing when I first learned how to surf. You know, I'll tell you what, learning how to surf is one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. And I've played a lot of sports. And you sit out there and you're trying to paddle out and you're trying to keep your balance against waves that are bouncing you and knocking you, and you know, and you're rocking back and forth. And then finally a wave comes and you go to take off. And initially you ride on your belly. You might try to stand, but you stand up for about a half a second and then you're down, but you ride on your belly and get used to the idea of going with the wave and learning how to go with the wave and the character of it. And then after a few times, you try to maybe get up on your knees, you know, and till you get used to it. I mean, and finally, when I first learned how to, I actually on shore practiced standing, going from my belly to my feet in one quick motion, because you can't kind of creep your way to it. You got to get to your feet quick and get your balance quick. And I would actually lay the surfboard on the sand and practice jumping up, standing up quickly until I had that down so I could do it out in the water. And so it's the point of it is a step by step, level by level, same thing as reading and understanding the Bible. When you read it, you're not going to understand everything. I've been a Christian 40 plus years. I still don't understand everything. And I don't expect to understand everything, but that's not going to prevent me from reading it. And I will learn every time I do read something. So no seminary degree is necessary. Talk about that
before you move on.
Yeah.
When you were riding that wave on your belly, that was exciting, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You were like, I'm riding a wave.
Now, on the shore, they all knew I was a rookie and a nerd, but I didn't care. I was having fun.
You were having fun, you see. And what that does is that creates that exciting feeling, and it builds belief that if I can do it on my belly, you know.
That's right.
And I'm willing to bet you that when you were on the beach with that surfboard laying on the beach and you were and see, you remember the ladders at the fair where you had to climb the ladder and it was on a swivel, you know? And if you got to the top and rang the bell, you got a big stuffed animal, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And the guy that worked there would be like, boom, 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 ding, that's all you got to do. Now give me $3 and give it a try. And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do it. But I'll bet you the first time that now in surfing, I've never even taken a surfing lesson. I mean, my boys talk about it because I live at the beach. But now, isn't that called popping up?
Popping up?
When you're getting from the surfboard, the wave comes and you start on the wave, and then you got to pop up to your feet.
Yeah, I've never heard it called that, but that would be appropriate because that's basically what you're doing.
Because you can't just stand up. If you just try to stand up, it's like that thing at the fair. You're done.
You got to get your feet under you immediately.
Yeah, you have to pop up. And I bet the first time you did it on shore, on the sand, not even in the water, you were cheering for yourself.
Yeah, man, I was cloud nine, brother. Yeah, riding the waves. I was surfing.
And it's no different than wherever you are right now in your life, and you're headed towards living that Christian life. You may have just rode the wave on your belly, and that's your first step. I loved your analogy about that, how it progresses. The closest thing I went to one time, we went out to San Diego, California one time with a guy who was from there. And he goes, the waves are great. Let's go boogie boarding. That's where the board is. You hang on to and you ride with your feet hanging off the back, kind of like a surfboard laying on it, right? We spent about an hour out there. They spent about an hour out there riding waves. I spent an hour trying not to drown.
Yeah.
I mean, these waves.
That's what it
and
amounts
the waves
to.
aren't close to the shore like they're here on the East Coast. The waves are out there.
Yeah.
And so once I got out there, my number one goal was to get back. But every time I would get somewhere, it would draw me back out there. And I'm like, oh, and suck me back in. And I struggled. But, and they were talking about, wasn't that fun? I went, no, I was trying not to die the entire time I was out there.
And you're right, Alan. It is a progression. I mean, eventually I was able to improve to the point where I could ride. I went to Puerto Rico, rode 9 and 10 foot waves,
Wow.
and so every good thing has a beginning, and you have to start out bad at it, and I think there's a progression. You have to start out bad, then you get bad, good, and then you get good, bad, or something like that, and then you get good. It's a progression, But everybody, whatever you do, even reading the Bible, even praying, I talk to a lot of brothers that that have a hard time praying, and it's like, I don't know what to say. You just talk like you and I are talking, Alan. You just talk to God, and just share your heart with Him, and pause a few minutes and listen, see what He's going to say to you. And then, same thing with reading the Bible, just start, it does. You don't have to be a preacher or some charismatic, eloquent speaker. Just talk to God. That's all praying is. And he is anxious. That's the cool thing about it. He is more anxious to hear from us than we are to pray to Him. And He just loves us that much. And He loves it so much when we come to Him. And there's you don't have to be a pastor, and it doesn't matter what you say,
It's funny, David.
It will get smoother and easier and more comfortable.
How the world changes us, and the world changes our thoughts and our beliefs and our values. And this guy here, he's talked to God, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. All you gotta do is say something and something and something, and all you have to say is amen.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I say that because I think, David, you and I may have talked about this. When this guy was younger, he would tell my wife, he'd say, yeah, I met my sister in heaven and I talked to her. Well, she had a miscarriage, which was a girl. And he would tell the story at 3 and 4 years old, like, yeah, and she, kind of like the movie Heaven is Real.
Yeah. So I was thinking.
Yeah, I talked to my sister and what's her name? Well, I don't know what her name is because they hadn't named her. And he goes, and she died in mommy's belly and she couldn't come, but God sent me down instead.
Wow.
What happened to me?
I know what happened to you. That's who we're talking about right now. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And so when I'd say, well, what was it like to talk to God? And he would be like, huh? Like, what do you mean? What is it like? I mean, like that didn't, it wasn't like it. He say, well, you just talked to him. I just talked to him. He just said, And so a lot of times we in life make it complicated because we think that it's difficult. But as you just said, God loves to talk to us, wants to talk to us, doesn't he?
Yeah, especially us men.
Yeah.
We always tend to overcomplicate things, try to think too much. I know I do. I overprocess, I overthink, and I don't think I'm alone in that.
Men are logical, women are emotional.
They got me and my brother.
And that's not speaking disparagingly of women at all. You know,
No.
you know,
it's the balance is what it is.
That's right.
You can't take. I mean, think about how this world would be if they were all men.
It wouldn't be. We'd have killed ourselves.
We would have, because leave out all the, relationship stuff, because that's what the women are here to help us do. Help us become more emotional and relational and, caring and loving, because men are just like, this is mine, don't touch it or I'll kill you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and men and women, when God created us, and especially established the marriage as it takes two to show the complete picture of the love of God and the character of God. Without women, the presentation of the character of God and His love would be incomplete. And vice versa, without men, the characterization, the character, and the love of God would be incomplete. And it takes two. Now, I'm not married, but in a marriage, it's that presentation that God is trying to establish to show the world His love and what a relationship to Him it should be like.
Yeah, and David, kind of to get a little bit back to where we were trying to talk today, we want to talk about the 4 pillars of a man's heart. And we look at that like the 4 legs of a stool. Okay, there's 4 legs to a stool. And if one of those legs is shorter than the other, then you're going to be out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
If you take one of those legs off, you're going to fall. And so there's 4 pillars of a man's heart and what a man's called to be. And, when a man builds a civilization, a small civilization that outlives him, what kind of man has shoulders broad enough to build that? You call it civilization, call it a heritage, call it a family, call it a team, call it
a legacy.
A legacy, because you're going to leave a legacy. And it says that a man influences his family for 3 to 4 generations.
Yeah, you're going to leave a legacy. You have no choice in that, but you do. We as men do have a choice in what legacy we live.
That's right. That's right. And the first of the 4 pillars that we talk about is being a king. Being a king, and that's a man of vision and of character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that vision thing, David. We were talking earlier about the guy who lays asphalt for a living, or the guy who sells cars, or the guy who is, we were talking yesterday, I think we mentioned Jeff Bezos, for example, Jeff Bezos. When you look at the Jeff Bezos and the Warren Buffett and now the Microsoft guy, what's his name?
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates just announced a divorce.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? See, when you talk about vision, and a lot of people aspire to have vision in their life, well, and this is just my humble opinion, and it's humble, and I bring you this humble opinion, David, because I've lived that, not near to the extent. I was never a billionaire by any stretch.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when I started in the restaurant business when I was 19 years old, I found an industry that I was really treated well, respected. I was respected, that I was good at, that I could help people, that I really loved what I was doing. And as I progressed through that, got married, had kids, I started making more and more money. And there was always these advances that you could make to make more money, but it required the majority of my time. I traveled all the time.
Yeah.
So the vision that I had, and when we talk about vision, the 4 pillars of a man's heart, a man with vision. Well, it's you've got to decide what the vision is. When you're called to be a man of God, you're a king, you're a warrior, you're a mentor, and you're a friend, and you have to have your priorities right. It has to be God, your wife, your children.
That's right.
And then possibly your job or your employment that you're providing for them.
Your occupation.
Your occupation, yeah. And then friends down here somewhere else. And out of those top 5, we've yet to say money.
Mm-hmm.
And so when your vision is off, take an airplane, put it in the sky, leave New York, say we're flying to California, cover up the windshield, or just don't tell the pilot where we're going. Here we go. Where are you going to land? Where are you going to end up? What's the future look like for you?
Yeah.
You see, the vision if your vision is to become wealthy, whatever that means. See, I know a lot of people who make $50,000, $60,000 a year as a family, and they're extremely happy. I know people that make $50,000 and $60,000 a month that are miserable.
Well, we can look at Hollywood and the athletics, the professional athletics. That's a prime example of so many. I mean, how many of them are committing suicide? How many of them are have devastated their families through whatever means? And it's because money doesn't fill that void, that cross-shaped hole in our hearts, and that only God can fill.
Right.
And, so that's a testimony in and of itself.
Well, the vision is what is my vision as a true servant leader of God? What is my vision? Because God calls us to lead our family and to lead others to Him and to be good Christians.
Yeah.
And so when my vision, when I get my priorities out of order, when money gets ahead of wife, gets ahead of children, gets ahead of all those things, gets ahead of God, and a lot of times it happens. I have a friend of mine, and his father is a minister. Been a minister in a small town for I guess, I don't know, maybe his whole life. I don't know. My friend's whole life anyway. And he's been struggling with finding his calling and his purpose. And he's done different businesses and he's done different things. And I've seen him try some things that concerned me. And when you say concerned me, I mean, hey, I don't have any responsibility to him or for him. He's got his own wife. He's got his own kids. He's his own man. He's a military guy. He's retired from the military. And he's done a couple of businesses that are questionable in character, I'd say. Some I don't know what the word for them is properly. I just call them gambling houses, for example, where poor people who can't afford to gamble go in and play these machines, and if they win, whatever. Mm. Well, then I got an invite from this individual to like a page, like a group. And I looked at it and I thought, well, he must have got spammed. Somebody must have in Facebook, they'll create a fake page of yours, right?
Yeah.
And I thought he must have got spammed because he wouldn't do that. So then about 3 weeks later, he sends out a message. Hey, my Facebook page got spammed, and so if anybody invites you, but I'm like, and I sent him a message. Whew, thank God, brother. I was beginning to wonder about you. He goes, why? Did you get some invite? I said, yeah, I got an invite to join this gentleman's club strip bar that it said you were the new owner of. And he goes, well, I am.
Oh.
And I said, oh, so that wasn't spam? And he said, no. And I said, that surprises me.
Yeah.
And his answer was, why? Does that surprise you?
Yeah.
And you know, I haven't answered the question yet, because how do you answer that?
Well, yeah, and that speaks to his lack of a vision. And years ago when I ran a lot on the beach, I would, in order for me to take my mind off of the pain in my legs after a couple of miles, I was running 7, 8, 9 miles at that time, I would lock in on a light way down the beach. And I would try some experiments while I'm running. When you're running and you have nothing else going on in your head, you do weird stuff. So I would try some experiments about if I locked my eyes on that light and kept it there and tried to run that way or run that way, kind of gradually going that way, I found it very difficult to do. I would always invariably start turning back towards the place I had locked in. And that's what a vision is. It's an illustration of when a man, the necessity for a man, for a husband, for a dad to lock in a vision, and that vision can change. Doesn't mean it's a lifetime commitment in that regard. There are other lifetime commitments, of course, but that vision can change. But that's what a guy has to do in terms, and that's what we're talking about in terms of having a vision, a long-term course that you believe God has called you to do, and by the gifts that He's given you, by the things that you love to do, and the desires that you have, and all that coincides with the vision that he has given you to lock into. And Alan, you said a couple of times yesterday, and it's funny, in fact, we started it when we first got on. I want to tell them that when we first got on the StreamYard today, we were talking, and it's like, wait, man, our best conversations are we need to go ahead and get on the show. Like we talked an hour yesterday, about, and it was just like 10 minutes. It goes by so fast. And so that's what he's referencing to when he says yesterday we talked. It just happens. And that's really one of the origins of this program, is that the stuff we would invariably talk about are things critical. I mean, I would get off the phone and just feel closer to the Lord, stronger, rejuvenated, encouraged. And I know Alan felt the same way. And it's like, man, this is what God wants us to do. And this is our vision for this show, is that long-term impact of impacting men to be the men God has called them to be.
And it's and talking about vision, when it talks about that, the 4 pillars and creating a vision, the vision is for you, for your family, for your children, for your future, because vision, I think where people get confused on that, David, is they're visualizing the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the next 30 years, instead of visualizing eternity.
Yeah.
Instead of visualizing, as you can see my little man over here on the corner who's dancing on the chair right now. If you've noticed, and I don't know if you're watching this on live or the recording or whatever, if you've noticed, he is emulating what we're doing and saying.
Yeah.
You were doing this earlier and he was doing this earlier. I was doing this and he was doing this.
Yeah.
You see, we're creating a vision for our generations to come.
That's right.
By what we say and by what we don't say, by what we do and by what we don't do.
Mm-hmm.
And so vision is for what is, I was talking to somebody the other day and I said to them, think about this, because we talk about tombstones. And my tombstone is going to say William Allen Newell, 1960 dash and a date. Well, there's only one person that knows that second date, and that's God. But between those dates is a representation of the vision. Huh?
G-O-D.
G-O-D, that's right. Is the life that I've lived through the vision that I've created. But you see,
just in that dash, your whole life is encapsulated.
But that vision doesn't stop at that date. Let's just say that it's 2021 right now. Let's give it another 30 years. And what? 2051. Well, guess what? My vision for my life and my family's life doesn't stop in 2051.
Right.
It continues on through my children, through my grandchildren, and through my great-grandchildren.
That's right. And
so I was talking to this person the other day, David, and here's what I said to them. Because we were talking about goals, and we were talking about their future and what their plans are and some of the struggles they were having in life, and I was ministering them. And I said, you know, it seems tough right now for you. Life seems tough for you right now, and I understand. He lost his brother tragically, and he was struggling with it. And I said, but when you pass away and you die, because you're looking at death, I said, number one, you have to understand something. Your brother is not dead. His body is, but his spirit lives on. So the physical body that he occupied here on earth has died. His spiritual being continues.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so will yours. And I said, I'm here to tell you right now that in my opinion, that he's looking down on you right now, and he's saying, don't cry for me. Don't feel sorry for me. Focus on my family. Focus on my children. His brother has 3 young children. And I said, you're their uncle. And from this day forward, you're their mentor. You're their person who they're going to look up to. You're a person who can, if you choose to, create a vision for them and change their life going forward because their father tragically passed away. And I said, don't you think he would want you to do that? And he said, yeah.
And not just in eternity, Alan, here specifically, you know, in the physical, you know, you guys, you might be the first Christian in your family. You may come from a long line of non-Christians, never darkened the doors of the church or anything. And you're the first believer in your family. Well, the trajectory of your family can change completely from you on. You have kids, you raise them in the church, you teach them principles of God, and their lives change. And then they may not grow up to be a pastor or anything, but they're going to have kids and they're going to do the same thing. And they're going to have kids and they're going to do the same thing. And God tells us that we impact generation to generation, and he impacts us generation to generation, both good and bad. And you know, who knows? 5 generations down the road, you may give your children may give birth to the next Billy Graham, but that's how it works. You have changed because of what you do now, what you do today in regards to your family and how you teach them, how you model your life after Christ. You are potentially changing the trajectory of the rest of the generations in your family's name. And so on into eternity. Not only your life, you're going to pass away and go into eternity, but that's the legacy we're talking about, that you have the potential to leave. And it's crucial to be a man of vision, as we've been talking about, to be a man of vision and understanding that, and that be part of your vision. Probably, I would think, even the mainstay of your vision. And then from within that, you build you do things, you incorporate things, to make that vision to come to fruition. And as Alan said, it's one of the 4 pillars, and that vision is really one of the most critical, if not the most critical aspect of raising a godly family, being a godly man. And it's mindset, Alan, it's mindset. A lot of guys are thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. And that's what we hope on this program to do, is to give some ideas, because we've been through it. We're going through it. We're learning too. We're hoping we can just encourage you through some of this stuff. But you got to keep in mind, it's mindset. And at the beginning, if you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you probably won't. And, Alan, I learned a real big lesson when I was playing baseball with my son. He was a fantastic pitcher. He had a curveball that would break your neck trying to catch it. I mean, it would go way out here. I'm reaching over here to try to catch it, and it curves back and it hits me in the chest, Right. And it got to the point where, gosh, I don't even like playing catch with him, because his pitches are so wicked, and he has some speed, and because invariably I'd be throwing and I'd be throwing with him, and he'd throw back and it'd hit me in the shins, or I'm ducking and dodging and everything else, and I realized that's because of my mindset. And I decided to go out there next time and say, look, I'm going to catch that ball. I don't care if I get hit. I don't care if it hits me in the shin or whatever. I'm going to change my mindset and playing catch with him, and I'm going to catch that ball. And I made that change, that one little subtle change in my mindset. And you know what? I never got hit. I caught the ball, no matter how wicked his curve was. I started catching it, and I've been playing ball all my life, so it's not like I can't catch. I was a good athlete. But it was, and I realized it's a mindset, and that applies to virtually everything you do. You want to be a good dad? Tell yourself, adjust your mindset that you are a good dad. God has made you to be a good dad. He's the perfect dad, and he will teach you and give you the power and the spirit to be that good dad. You want to be a good husband? Change your mindset. You can do it. God has made you that man to be that good husband. You want vision? Change your mindset that you can find that vision. You can acquire that vision, and God, even better, God will give you the power and the spirit and the strength to accomplish that vision. But you got to change your mindset and believe that he has a vision for you, and he does. He has a vision for you. There's no man that walks the face of this earth that doesn't have a calling and a vision that is given to him by God. And in pursuit of him is how we find it. And how we find it is by getting into his word, spending time in prayer, and engaging in the body of believers in community. So guys, you can do it. You can do it. Change your mindset.
And and it doesn't mean being perfect. It means doing all you can do is all you can do, but all you can do is enough, and be the best person you can be today. Because some of you, where you're starting from today, the vision may be, hey, in 6 months from now, I'm going to have my family going to church. That's a great vision to have.
Yeah.
Now, listen, right now they don't want to go, but I'm going to go. I'm not waiting on them.
That's the step you got to take. You establish the vision, then you start building to make that vision happen. And like you said, that would be the first step. You start going.
And listen, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Don't criticize them for not coming. You see, you want to lead them by example, which means they look at you and go, something's different about dad. Something's different about mom. She's more caring, loving, understanding. She's more passionate. Must be something to this church thing. You see, let's talk about the positives of the church. Let's not come home and be the Bible thumper.
Right.
And make them feel negative and bad about going or not going, because all you're doing then is discouraging them. So you go and be positive. Or you can just go and come home and say, how was it? Great.
or complaining about money and complaining that the preacher preached too long or anything of that nature. You're exactly right. You got to be positive because they're listening.
Yeah. If you think your preacher preaches too long, you need to go to an evangelical church down here in the South.
Yeah.
And you might want to pack a snack.
There's a quote I heard many years ago that's just been permanently etched into my heart and mind. It says, they may not read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but they are certainly reading you. And that coincides with what Paul says. We are epistles written on our hearts, epistles written among men. And as I said, they may not read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but they are going to read you. And what are they going to read when they read you? And again, Alan, doesn't mean you're going to be perfect, at all.
Right.
But it's that character that you live, that lifelong character that you live. You get up in the morning and going to church. You can invite them. Of course, kids, you'd probably make them. But it's not a thing where, you condemn them if they don't go, especially if they're teenagers, it's more difficult. You don't condemn them nor judge them. You love them into going. And
That's right. That's right.
And that's, again, it gets back to the mindset. You got to have the godly mindset, to bring that to fruition. As the fruit of the Spirit, as Paul talks about in Galatians, that's the godly mindset.
That's so true. And see, it's a daily, I mean, when you talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, and some of you may be familiar with that, and I apologize while I'm scrolling, looking for this message right here. When you look at Alcoholics Anonymous, okay, has today changed? One of the things they talk about in there is being able to, they give these coins. And when you start out, I'm not, forgive me, I'm not an expert on it. I know a lot of people who have had success doing that. But see, they give them awards like a weekly chip. You made it a week.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! You made it a month. You made it a year. When they make it a year, it's a big deal. They celebrate. They come together. 1 year. Now, that's for overcoming an addiction.
Yeah.
You see, I like to think about it in a different way, and let's celebrate creating the change in our lives. And that we today were a great, we were focused on we were a great man of vision and character today. I was strong. I was powerful. I had faith. I had wisdom. I was a man of heart and love today. Wednesday, May the 5th. And then guess what? Tomorrow, I made it 2 days, David. 2 days. See, they're celebrating not having a drink, but I'm celebrating being a godly Christian man and a leader for my family for 2 days. You see, people think that, oh, crap, I messed up on day 3. I'm done. I couldn't do this. Didn't work for me. I tried it, David. I tried that church thing. I went for 3 weeks. Just didn't do anything for me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just, and listen, I'm going to say this. If you went to church ABC for 3 weeks and it didn't do anything for you, number one, I personally don't believe that 3 weeks is enough time, but find a different church.
Yeah.
Not all ministers are for everybody.
That's right.
And that's okay. That doesn't make them a bad minister. Pastor friend of mine who I'm still friends with, he said to me, it's interesting how my brother-in-law was a Methodist minister too. He said, it's so interesting how the sessions go and how my ministry goes and how my preaching goes and how my Bible study goes and the lesson that I teach today or the sermon. I preach a sermon And I'll have people come up to me and say, yeah, you did pretty good today. You did pretty good. He says, you'd be surprised that the people come up that'll say to you, wasn't your best, but it was good.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, people really do say that. Or people will say, preacher, I know what you were trying to get across, but you shouldn't say blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He said, you'd be surprised at what they say. He said, I'll have somebody come up and say, preacher, that wasn't too bad. Wasn't your best, but it wasn't bad. And then 4 people later, or somehow come up to me and go, that was the most amazing sermon I've literally ever heard in my life. Pastor, you touched my heart. You touched my soul. I'll never be the same after hearing that message. Now, 2 things I want to say about that, David, is one is that as you're walking through your walk with God, we are the messengers for God, no different than your pastor is. So you might have made it for 3 days. And on that 3rd day, you run into somebody and you just minister to them. Now, you might not call it ministry. I just had a conversation with them. And you might change a life.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't even realize it. Yeah.
Forever. You might change their life, the life of their family, and the life of their entire family for generations to come through a 5-minute conversation over something you heard at a church from a pastor that really didn't strike a chord in you. But see, that message wasn't for you. That message was for that person you saw at Planet Fitness on the treadmill beside you.
In my own personal testimony, it's a never-ending reminder to me, the guy that led me to Christ 40 plus years ago. It's 47 years ago. His conversation with me was maybe 3 minutes long. And then he left. 10 minutes later, I surrendered my life to Christ. To this day, he has no idea. Yeah. He had no idea what happened. He probably walked away and said that was a waste of time, or didn't realize, the impact of what he had to say that it had on me, And so we never know what kind of impact it's going to, or what we might say, an encouraging word. I've heard story after story of people that just shared an encouraging word of somebody that was on their way to commit suicide. And it changed the trajectory of their life. You just never know. But it's being available and getting back to the vision. That's got to be what your vision for your life is, part of it is you're willing to do whatever God wants you to do. You're just going to be available. And for a man to truly step into his biblical manhood, he has to pretty much come to the end of himself. And because Jesus says, if you lose your life, if you gain the world and lose your life, you've lost your soul. But if you lose your life, you'll gain your soul. And what he's trying to say is, we don't kill ourselves or anything like that. It's just we give up that selfish what's the word I'm looking for? False man. That this facade that we're living behind, and come out from behind that and step out in faith, trusting God that he will use us if we allow him to do so. In the book Wild at Heart, he refers it to that poser. We all strike a pose to the public, and of that image that we want people to think we are. And where the difference is where that image of who we want people to think we are and who we really are come into balance. That's when you become that authentic man of God. But too often we kind of do this and want people to think we're more than what we are, or we have more money than we have. That's why we go out and buy these fancy cars and these big houses. Is most of it is because of image, trying to portray a facade. But when God gets a hold of your life and you're focused into a vision, that will come into a more balanced perception, and that's where your joy. God nowhere does he promise that we're going to be happy. he says we'll be blessed and we'll have joy, and joy comes from within. And happiness is based on happenings. Joy comes from being fulfilled in what you're doing and how you're living, where you're at peace with yourself. You lay your head on the pillow at night at peace, and that only comes from having that peace of God. And that comes from having that vision that God has for you, that you have to seek him for. It's not something you just snap your fingers and it comes to you. You got to pursue him. You got to ask him, and he will give you that vision. He will give you that focus of life and help you understand what life is about.
So glad you said that, because it's joy and peace. And when you have, as Stu Weber talked about in the book, The 4 Pillars of a Man's Heart, the vision, you have to have a vision, to be a good provider, to make a good living, and to provide the physical needs of your family. You see, the meaning is the shepherd that is looking out for the needs of his flock, his family, his children, his grandchildren, and to provide a physical, social, and spiritual livelihood that provides for them joy, peace, and for their physical well-being, meaning the food they need to eat, the shelter they need, the protection that they need. So he has a vision to provide the resources for the needs of his family. That's what the vision's about. And so you talk about that, David, when you can lay your head down at night and you know that you've provided those things, you're going to have joy and peace.
And it goes back to what you were telling your son. You can only do what you can do.
That's right.
If you know in your good conscience that you're doing the best you can, you're working as hard as you can with the time amount that you've been given in a given day, given in a given week, and it's not a God to you where you're not spending time with your children, you're not spending time with your wife, then that's part of being able to be at peace about it,
That's right.
and it's same thing with decisions, guys. Sometimes you just got to make a call. It's not right here. Every decision that we make is not right here. Oh, well, I need to decide on this. So there's that. There's a lot of things in the Word that will help guide you and help you make those decisions. And if you're prayed up and you're in the Word, those things will come up through you. You'll wonder, how did I get so smart? But it's because it's not you. It's the Word of God that's in you. But sometimes you just got to make a call. Go right or go left, and you can't second guess yourself. If you make the call to go right and you're doing it with the best of intentions and with a clear conscience and heart, and you think you're doing the best you can for your family, don't condemn yourself. Don't beat yourself up over it. Make the decision and go with it.
Don't compare yourself.
That's right.
See, that's the biggest mistake. See, that is the biggest tool that the enemy is using on us right now, David. It's not a battle of physical, it's a battle of spiritual and mental. Because see, he puts those pictures out there, these pictures, and I always say about social media, people are not who they post P-O-S-T to be. They're standing in front of that Lamborghini, but it could be rented. I've got a picture of me in front of a green, I think it's a Lamborghini, okay, and sitting in the driver's seat, and checking it out. And I mean, it's an interesting car to say the least, but it wasn't mine. And I stated on there it was my friend's car, and he bought it. And I got out of the car and looked at him and said, "That's a nice toy." Now, I mean, and so I didn't feel bad that I wasn't going to spend. I have no idea how much he spent on that car, but it was a 2-seater and he's got a family of 5. And so if that's his toy and he's got plenty, and he does extremely well. But you see, that doesn't mean that because he's a billionaire and I'm not a billionaire that I'm not successful. That
right.
My vision is not right for me and my family. Just because, there's people out there who are general contractors. There's some of the most, there might be a framer. We talked earlier about a guy who does framing for a living. If you look at, and I don't want to get into, I hesitate to say this, But if you look at some of the people who come from other countries and they're coming into our country and they're working either on green cards or even illegally, whatever, it doesn't matter. Because I used to hire a bunch of them in the restaurant business. But let me tell you something. They'll work their heinies off because they have a vision for their family back in their home country, of what they're going to provide for them. They'll live 8 and 10 in a 2-bedroom place and take all their money and send it back home. And by the time they're 40 or 50 years old, they go back home and they retire to what's considered a nice, wealthy life because they've worked for 20, 30 years to provide that. And they will work 16 to 20 hours a day and are very happy and at peace and joy with their lives and who they are and where they are and what they're doing because they have a vision. They have a vision for their future with their family. It's not the same vision as mine. It's not the same vision as yours, David. You know, you and I talked for several years about vision because you had a divide. And you had your vision, but others in your life had a different vision. And we struggle with that because we want us all to have the same vision for the future. But not always are they going to. That doesn't make you right and them wrong. That's their vision. Doesn't mean I have to go down that path with them. Because and we talk about vision and calling on our life and what we're called to do and what our calling here on life is, what our vision is on life. You see, you said peace and joy. If I'm living in peace and joy in my life, whether I'm making $40,000 a year or $40,000 a month, if I'm at peace and joy, then I'm living in my vision and my calling. But if I try to follow somebody else's and live by theirs and do what they're doing, I'm going to be uncomfortable and I'm not going to be at joy and peace and I'm not going to be living in my calling.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing with people today. And what we want to let you know as a Christian man, woman, child, whatever, is joy and peace is what life's called to be. We're called to love others and have joy and peace in our lives and to follow what God's calling is for us. Each and every one of us is a unique, different individual. You and I, although we come together here on this stage, our visions are somewhat different for our lives in the future. And we have to follow that in order to have, and that's why I'm elaborating so much on what you said, that's the most important thing for life here on this earth is joy and peace, create a vision for our family and lead our flock. Don't leave your flock. Don't leave your sheep in the field by themselves. They'll get eaten.
Yeah, the wolves and the bears.
We'll eat them and kill them.
And
don't,
and that's a great segue. I know we got to go here, Alan, and we'll continue. We'll pick up on this whole 4 pillars and talk probably more about the vision. But what happens when you leave your flock in the field? And I'm going to share a couple of statistics, Alan, we talked about earlier that I found. When a father attends church, there's a 93% chance that everyone else in the household will too. You know, that's leading your flock. A survey showed that if a father does not attend church regularly, and even if the mother does, only 1 child in 66 children will become a regular church attender. If the dad does, if he becomes a regular attender, that drops down to 1 in 29. And Promise Keepers, we've all heard of Promise Keepers. They did a study that reported that if a child is the first one in the household to attend church, there's only a 3.5% probability that the rest of the family will. If the mother is the first one, it's a 17% probability. But when it's the dad, it jumps all the way to a 93% probability that the rest of the family will attend church. And statistics are staggering when about children whose fathers are not involved in their lives. There's a 70% less or when they are involved in their lives, there's a 70% less likely to drop out of school. There's 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 greater percentages. 76% of teen girls said that fathers influence their decisions on whether or not they become sexually active premaritally. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. And there's statistic after statistic, and I don't want to bore you guys with this, but I think you get the point. It's the man's call to establish the vision, and that doesn't demean or disparage the mother in the least way. It's that whole team. And I want to finish with a quote out of a book written by Roderick Hairston, and actually I got the quote out of Four Pillars, and he wrote a book called Cover Her: How to Create a Safe Place for the Ladies in Your Life, Physically, Financially, Emotionally, Spiritually. And he says, when a man lives up to his role, life-giving things start to happen. He goes on to say, I firmly believe that every family and societal problem can get better when a man knows how to fulfill his role and takes action in life. We men cannot afford to blow our assignments. It's not merely a team that is counting on us or our family that is counting on us. It's actually all of society. So,
Amen.
guys, we've been talking a lot about vision. So I'm going to ask you to think about that. A great question that A.W. Tozer, no, it's Oswald Chambers asked, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about God? And whatever it is that comes to your mind is who you believe God to be is in your life. The same thing with a vision. What is your vision for your family? What is your vision for your life? Think about that. And we're going to talk about it more next week. And so let me encourage you to do that. And if you don't have a vision for your life, start praying about it. Get into the Word. God will show you that vision.
Lord, we thank you today for bringing us together on this podcast, video cast, YouTube cast, whatever you want to call it. Lord, we thank you for inspiring David and I to bring the Word of God to people, not just men, but people of all ages and all backgrounds and of all histories and all standings throughout the world. And we ask, Lord, that these words be heard and that they be your words and your message so that we can encourage people and inspire people to be not only just men of God, but people of God, and we can lead those to you. In Jesus' name we pray.